Hey everybody. Alright, here's what we're going to do. You've already watched videos on the Robinair Cooltech 34-788 air conditioner machine that we have here. And we're just going to take a look at it for just a second and do a very simple reminder on it. You've got your low pressure gauge, you've got your high pressure gauge. Your on button. Wait for the computer to start up in it and take us where we need to be. All right, so right off the bat it's telling us that refrigerant in pounds, that the refrigerant is low. So it's asking you want to fill the tank. We're not going to fill the tank right now, but what we want to do is we want to take a look at this Crown Vic over here, and we're going to locate the test ports. First thing we're going to do, locate the test ports. All right, you'll notice that here's one test port and here's the other test port. Usually, the small line is the high side. The large line is the low side, usually, not always. So on this Crown Vic, the complaint that came in was that there no blower motor and no air coming out of the no cold air coming out of the AC vents. So we're going to start it up for just a moment. I had already turned the air conditioner to max air. I had turned the blower to high, and in some cases, to get a good reading, I find it's just best to go down the road and get a reading coming out of the vent like that. When you're sitting in the shop like we are here, there's insufficient air moving in front of the vehicle to be able to displace the heat to get your maximum cooling. You can take a large fan and put in front of the condenser and blow air through like that. That's another way to make it work. If we were getting air out of the from the blower motor, then I would put my thermometer. You can see right here, it has a coated area, a light blue area, where your normal range should be. Automotive air conditioning should be somewhere between 40 degrees and 45 degrees coming out of the vent. Obviously, we don't have that. Now, the things I want to show you that I'm going to do. One of the things I'm looking for compressor operation. Now, this car has a compressor clutch, and as the belt turns the pulley, you'll see that the compressor clutch, when it engages, turns the center hub on the compressor. This compressor cutting on and off, it cuts on and off for more than one reason. But on this vehicle, with the compressor cycling on and off, we call it cycling. It's cycling because we suspect that there is a low refrigerant charge. All right, we're going to take a look at our air conditioning machine again. I'm going to pull the hoses off. They have a quick disconnect, like you're familiar with on our air hoses. Remember, the red side is high pressure, the blue side is low pressure. Now we're going to go over to the car and we're going to go to our test ports, and we're going to remove the caps from the test ports. There's one here beside the radiator on this car, and then there's one up near the firewall. And again, the high side hose is usually the small hose. The low side hose is usually the large hose. All right, so my blue goes to the low side. Notice that when I screw these knobs down and turn the valve on, I'll put this on. Let me pull it back off and show you. Notice how the valve is up. As I turn it down, you see it closes. All it's doing, that pin right there, is pressing the Schrader valve located inside the test port. That opens the Schrader valve. One mistake I've seen people make is they think that they need to tighten this down. You damage these connectors when you tighten them too much. You tear up the threads inside, they don't want to operate properly. So just run it up, and as soon as it gets to the end of its travel, you've got it. So I'm going to put it on here. I am going to open the valve by turning it clockwise. Now let's go back to the AC machine and look what we've got. So what we want to do now is we want to look at our gauges. And you'll notice the compressor comes on when the pressure goes down on the low side. All right, it's off now and the pressure is equalizing. On. On. And obviously when the pressure rises, it's off. The thing that we want to look at here is both of these pressures appear low. If you remember back to the videos from Eric the Car Guy, he was saying that somewhere around 20 to 30 on the low side is normal, and on the high side, depending on the ambient temperature, that has a lot to do with it. So inside the shop here today, it's 70 degrees. Our high side pressure very likely may not get above 150 psi. So here's the thing with that. I can turn the heat on inside to raise the inside temperature of the car and then turn the air conditioner on. So if it's 100 degrees inside the car, I turn the air conditioner on, my high side pressure is going to be even higher. But cool inside the car, you turn the air conditioner on, your high side pressure should be around 150 to 200, not that high. So this one is a variable according to the temperature of the car, temperature of the outside. All right, on this one we have a high side pressure when the compressor's running of about 80 psi. We have low side pressure, well, it gets down to around 15 psi. So we know both of those are low. And one of the things you'll realize is that with low pressures on both sides, there's a real good possibility that the refrigerant charge in the AC system is low. All right, our pressures being low on the low side and low on the high side, we suspect a low refrigerant charge. One of the things we want to look at to help us diagnose the problem, these air conditioner lines we talked about, this being the high side, this being the low side, because we've got refrigerant coming through the lines here, the heat has already been subtracted from the refrigerant by the condenser up front. It leaves nothing but refrigerant and low temperatures. So what I really want to see, well, how's my air conditioner really doing? So I can put my hand around this low pressure line and I feel that it's a little bit cool. It's not very cool, but it's a little bit cool. Now, I might have a tendency to go to my high side line and put my hand on it, but guess what? It's going to be the other extreme. If the air conditioner is working properly, if you put your hand on this high side line, you will burn your hand. So I'm not going to just reach out and grab that line without doing some kind of little test on it. So I can sometimes I'll lick my fingers, not during COVID though, but I'll lick my fingers and then try it. Okay, wow. So it's maybe 100 degrees on that line. All right. If I had to guess, This one's going to be 40 degrees maybe. All right, that's okay. Let's talk about what we know so far. We know the air conditioner compressor is cycling in and out. We know the pressures are way too low on both sides. And we know that we have about 100 degrees here on this line and about 40 degrees here on this line. So we know this is not cold enough. We know this is not hot enough. That should burn you when you touch it. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to look at the amount of refrigerant that's in the vehicle. Okay, contrary to popular belief, you cannot tell how much refrigerant is in a vehicle unless you pull it all out and weigh it. So that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so the car is cut off now. It's not running, the compressor is not cycling on and off, everything is at a standstill. We want to look at where our pressures are. Let's talk about these pressures for a moment. Now, whether the vehicle, I saw one thing that I didn't like on one of the videos that I got you to watch. When the vehicle's been sitting overnight, it's been sitting inside your shop or sitting outside, whatever's the case, you'll notice that your pressures with the AC off, your pressures are going to be somewhere close to the ambient temperature of the car. So, whatever your temperature is, your pressures are going to reflect. Now, we've had the car running, so the temperature's raised right in this vicinity a little bit, but you can see that the pressure reading is between 60 and 70 psi here. It has equalized. Okay, you cut the car off, the pressure's equalized, and this is going to reflect the approximate temperature that it's finally gotten acclimated to. So we're looking at these here again. They've equalized. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the refrigerant from the car. We call it recovery. You're familiar with that. So we hit the recover button. It does its little check. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to wait and see what happens here. In a few minutes, the machine should have emptied the air conditioner system of all the refrigerant. Now, going back to one of our previous forums, do not make the mistake to think that when you recover the refrigerant from an air conditioner system that you remove moisture from it. You may get a little bit of oil, but the moisture, if there's any in the system, it's still there. Moisture is only removed during the evacuation process. So, let's just wait for it to do its job. This always takes a few minutes.